Ngacho ke siyakhahlela kunizidwesha zakuthi. Good morning, dumelang, thobela, goeiemôre, akshay, bon dia. I'm trying, His Excellence. Welcome everyone to a very special conference. My name is Unati Kolanisi. I come from the northern KwaZulu-Natal, a place called Empangeni, from the University of Zululand. I will be driving this ship for the session. I am fitting bigger shoes of Professor Sileti. He's not here today. I hope I can make him proud. A special greetings to His Excellency, the former President of Mozambique, Joaquim Alberto Chissano. We will be talking about his biography later on. Also, I would like to welcome Her Excellency Spesia Wandira Kazibwe, Umama Unompumelelo, because yesterday you told us that you are the successful one. So we are honoring you today to say Mama Nompumelelo. Nompumelelo, yes. And I would also like to welcome the acting Vice Chancellor of the University of KwaZulu-Natal, Professor Busisiwe Ngama. She is standing in for Dr. Yarsfeld, who is not able to be here with us today. She is attending to a very important matter in Austria, but he does send his greetings and wishes us well. As very special person, Professor Hassan Kaya, our host. We have to welcome you today because you are a very important person. I would like to also extend special greetings to any traditional leader who is sitting amongst us, and also Abogogo to actually make themselves visible here. Gogo.
The recorder, she's got it. She's got it. It's on. It's on. Right, Prof, your first side is on. We can just go down here.
Siyathokoza. I also see very beautiful flowers, the leaders of tomorrow, the students, the learners. I just want us to say it loud. Youth, #Siyaphambili, the future is ours. Can we all say it in once? #Siyaphambili, the future is ours. A round of applause. Now I will just say, all protocols observed. I welcome you all. You are all important. Distinguished guests, welcome to a very special and one of its kind conference to honor the 100 years of Tata uRholihlahla Nelson Mandela. Uyemyem, uVelabambenzele, uSopicho, uNqolomsila, Thubhana, uQhumphase, uNtande, uMthembu, uNcikoza, uBhomoyi. Nelson Mandela, Nelson Mandela, aunalo swanaliye. Nelson Mandela, Nelson Mandela, Nelson Mandela, aunayo swanaliwe, aunayo swanaliwe na. Aunayo swanaliwe na. We should pride ourselves in our identity. When an African person is happy, they sing. When an African person is happy, they show their excitement by dancing. So we should not shy away on who we are. It doesn't really matter where we are. We are Africans. Thank you, Mama. Utata Mandela strongly believed in the potential of the youth, the young ones that you are seeing in this place today. He believed in the potential of youth as well as children to carry on the battle of reclaiming the African pride and identity, thus reposition the African continent to better attain a sustainable, inclusive economic growth for an improved quality of life and well-being for all. Hence, this forum brings together youth and those working with youth to share knowledge and experiences on how Africa and Asia can interface indigenous knowledge and other knowledge systems to mobilize and harness the potential of the youth and mitigate the challenges facing the well-being of children and youth to build sustainable, ethical, global communities. I'm not going to waste much time because Professor Khaya has to tell us exactly why we are here today. But before I invite Professor Khaya to tell us exactly why we are here today, I just wanted to quote Baba Nelson Mandela Rolihlahla, who said, "Our children are the rock on which our future will be built. Our greatest asset as a nation. They will be the leaders of our country, the creators of our national wealth, those who care for and protect our people." I close quote. So Professor Khaya, the director of the Indigenous Knowledge Center at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, you are a change agent to enforce transformation for betterment of humankind. Umdengendonga, kwaye ifutha lakho siyaliva. It means a man with a short stature, but tall in deeds. And we do recognize your footsteps. Please take on the podium to actually tell us, why did you invite us?
I thought you've done my job already. Anyway, good morning, everybody. I think the welcoming will be done by our acting Vice Chancellor. My name is Hassan Khaya. As you already heard, I'm the director of the Department of Science and Technology, National Research Foundation Center in Indigenous Knowledge Systems, with its hub at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. We are a partnership of 5 institutions. University of KwaZulu-Natal is the hub, University of South Africa, UNISA, Northwest University, Universities of Venda and Limpopo. Your Excellency, President Chissano, we are very much delighted to have you here. Your Excellency, Dr. Wandira, we heard you sincerely yesterday. We benefited already from your wisdom yesterday when we opened our platform. Minister Simao, Your Excellency, our acting Vice Chancellor, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. As you see on the program, my responsibility is to give you a background of how we all came about here. Last year in December, we were invited to an Asian, in fact, an international conference on bioethics in Kumamoto in Japan. And sometime at the early this year in March, myself and Dr. Jim Sami, representing the center, we also participated in a bioethics conference in Nepal and also another one in Bangkok. And it was also dealing with the issues of bioethics. And in our context of what is bioethics is the love of life. And the focus of the conference is love of life within the context of children and youth. Initially, in the old days, my background from the social sciences. And initially, whenever someone talked about bioethics, I always thought it something to do with medicine only, or people who are involved in medicine. But as we interacted with our colleagues from Asia during the various meetings and conferences we had together, we came to realize that the love of life goes beyond biology. And we from Africa also, we contributed to the fact that when you look at the love of life, especially with our philosophy of Ubuntu, that holistic perspective of life, which involves both us as humans and our natural environment, we need also to look at the love of life in a holistic way. So the conference came about when we were in Nepal, when we met our Asian colleagues, and we thought that, well, the coming together of Africans and Asians goes far beyond our current meetings, and came with the issue of the Bandung conference. Bandung is a town or a city in Indonesia. In fact, you have colleagues from Indonesia here, the young man there. We also met him in Thailand. He participates in the conference. You see what he's doing there. Very brilliant job in promoting the welfare of children and youth. So we came with the idea that in the spirit of Bandung conference, where our African leaders and the Asian leaders met in 1955, by then most of the African countries were not yet liberated from colonialism, but most of the Asian countries had already been liberated. So we thought, in the spirit of Bandung conference, brought together by the love of life, especially with the focus of children, because the largest number of our population are youth and children, and most of them have or are facing the problem of poverty, unemployment, and all the vagaries coming from issues of terrorism, whatever, the impacting one or the other. So we thought, why can't we, as two continents facing the largest number of children and youth suffering from poverty, unemployment, dreadful diseases, come together and organize something? At the same time, coincidentally, this is 100 years of the legacy of Nelson Mandela. So especially his love for children and youth. So we thought, bring the spirit of Bandung conference and celebrating the 100 years of Nelson Mandela, why can't you organize a conference together, especially here in Africa? Most of our colleagues have never been to Africa before. I remember I always keep on saying, one colleague in Nepal asked me whether we have cars in South Africa or something. Yeah, I remember one time, because I know that. I lived in Germany for 20 years. They used to ask us funny questions. So we thought, let's have this Africa-Asia conference here in Africa, Durban in particular, because here is where the Center in Indigenous Knowledge Systems is hosted. So the meeting today on Africa-Asia Forum is based on those two initiatives, the Bandung spirit of Africa-Asia, and also celebrating the legacy of Nelson Mandela. So the most important thing is also, Your Excellency, is what do we want to achieve out of the conference? One is the fact that we want to launch a Nelson Mandela Africa Asian Bioethics platform for children and youth. Just as yesterday, I said we had the honor of having Her Excellency Wandira. We launched the platform for indigenous knowledge-based sexual and reproductive health care. We would like also, out of this meeting today, which brings two continents together, to launch a platform on issues of bioethics with a focus on children and youth. And also, another important aspect is building a social network of youth peace ambassadors to promote love of life. I mean, Asia has gone very far in this context. We've got a lot of organizations, associations. We have also representatives here of colleagues from India, from Bangladesh, from Indonesia, from Thailand, and from Japan. And there were a lot of movements there focusing on this love of life, bioethics, with a focus on youth and children. So one of the things is to bring us together, the two continents, young people. That's why we got also to make sure that we have also students and youth from different formations here in South Africa who are going to participate in our deliberations as part of promoting that platform. And also another important aspect, the meeting together of representatives of the two continents here is enhancing a South-South cooperation on bioethics and global public health for and by children and youth in Africa and Asia. Part and parcel, because we have been looking at the participation of the North and South, but there is limited participation between the South and South, especially among young people. So this forum also will be one step forward in bringing together young people from the two continents. And also building Africa-Asia multi-country research teams, because there's so much. Those who were there when we were launching the platform yesterday, Her Excellency Wandira gave us a lot of challenges. There are so many things which contribute to our problems across the gender, but we don't take those things openly. And they need to be researched so that they can inform policy development and other strategies. So the question of forming research teams so that we share experiences from both continents. In fact, we had already initiated here in South Africa and here in eThekwini in particular, what we call the triple heritage. The triple heritage is looking at South Africa in particular, especially here in eThekwini, where we have representatives from Asia, Africa, and Europe. In the belief of complementarity of knowledge systems, we thought that in the apartheid time, cultural interaction, racial interaction were looked at as a problem. But in post-apartheid, we are promoting the philosophy that interaction among cultures, the complementarity of culture, each culture has its own knowledge system. So the complementarity of knowledge systems to focus on particular problems facing our society, unemployment, issues of teenage pregnancy, and food security. So we harness the different knowledge systems based on the different cultures and races living together as a strategy of promoting peace and harmony among races. That we look at interaction among cultures, races as an asset, not as a problem. So it's also in the same spirit that we need to build these research teams among young people, not just at the university level, but there are so many young people who are not in higher education institutions, but bring them together to do research, to interact, to share experiences in the benefit of solving a number of problems facing us. And also another important aspect, because we have the mandate of promoting indigenous knowledge systems and protecting it. So we thought integration of IKS in public health care, environmental preservation, and bioethics for children and youth is also an important challenge. So the conference also need to deliberate how do we use our community-based knowledge systems to ensure that we promote public health care, environmental protection and preservation as part of our life. And also we expect that at the end of the 3-day meeting here, we come up with a creation on bioethics, love of life, Africa and Asia together. So with those remarks, I give it over to the chairperson of the session to continue. Thank you very much.
Indeed, Mdengentonga. Isn't that so? Yeah. Okay. The university, thank you very much, Professor Kaya. The University of KwaZulu-Natal, through the Center of Indigenous Knowledge, has welcomed the challenge to create a dialogue and to serve as a platform for interactive engagement and to generate research-informed solutions to aid the future generation that is also gathered here on how to restore human dignity and how to promote love of life through public health care. Thank you so much, Professor Kaya. Distinguished guests, please help me to welcome the head of the household, the acting Vice-Chancellor of KwaZulu-Natal University, Umama uProfessor Ncama. Siyabonga Mbokodo ngokuvuma ukuthi namhla sihlangene emzini wakho. Ukuze sizobuka sizothola izindlela zokuthi singabamba liphi iqhaza ukuzithuthukisa ngaphandle kokuthengisa ngobuthina. We highly appreciate this wonderful platform that we have granted to us, Africa, Asia patriots, to reclaim our identity and reposition our pride as a society, paving a way towards living a legacy of loving life through the integration of IKS and to promote healthcare. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, President Chisano, Your Excellency, Vice President Wandire Kazibwe, Professor John Tesha, Executive Secretary of Forum for Former Heads of States and Government, Professor Daryl Mesa, President, American University of Sovereign Nations, our indigenous knowledge holders and practitioners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, you are all welcome, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you on behalf of the University of KwaZulu-Natal. My name is Busi Ncama, Busisiwe if it's full, but I'm commonly referred to as Busi. I am here to represent my Vice-Chancellor, Professor Albert van Jaarsveld. So I'm here to welcome you, as she said, Namukelekile nonke. While Mandela is best known for promoting African dignity in the liberation struggle, he left humanity with a legacy to improve the welfare of marginalized, especially the women and children. We should not forget the successful fights he waged for the public health of the African people, especially the children. This is articulated in one of his famous quotes where he said, "There can be no keener revelation of the society's soul than the way in which it treats its children." Mandela was the chair of the Vaccine Fund Board during his presidency. He rallied many world leaders and helped to secure resources to reach children and youth in remote areas of sub-Saharan Africa. He believed this was extremely important because millions of children and youth die from preventable diseases worldwide. Nelson Mandela, affectionately known as Madiba, worked with the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunizations, including the WHO, the World Bank, and UNICEF, to focus money and attention on the problem. Mandela identified himself with the suffering caused by HIV, poverty, and discrimination across races and cultures. During the 2000 International AIDS Conference, he emphasized that the world should spend major resources to stop the spread of dreadful diseases affecting the poor. His dedicated involvement helped to inspire scientists, activists, and other top political leaders to work harder and help bring significant results in the public health care sphere. One aspect which tends to be marginalized in Mandela's life was his love for the African indigenous foods, which he considered to be very nutritious and healthy. Despite being known and his status as a globe-trotting statesman, Mandela always craved the flavors he grew up with. The featured recipes include umphokoqo, a porridge made of maize meal and sour milk. On the 31st of August 1970, Mandela wrote to his wife Winnie from Robben Island prison, "How I long for amasi, traditional South African fermented milk, thick and sour. You know, darling, there is one respect which I dwarf all my contemporaries, or at least about which I can confidently claim to be second to none, healthy appetite." That was Mandela in 1970, unquote. Mandela's long walk to freedom also included his articulation on love of life, especially his concerns on environmental ethics. He envisioned a world where all people are able to live a fully dignified life with clean air to breathe and clean water to drink. This reflects his understanding on the symbolic relationship between environmental and human health. We commend the organizers of the conference, especially the DS team, NRF Center in Indigenous Knowledge Systems at UKZN, for taking the initiative to convene this Africa-Asia International Forum on Public Health Care, Bioethics for Children and Youth, honoring the 100 years of Nelson Mandela legacy and building on the spirit of the 1955 Badung Conference. I think it is also fitting that in South Africa, this month is also Women's Month, and we are also celebrating some of the icons of the struggle, such as Mama Albertina Sisulu. We also lost Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela. We remember all these pioneers. It's my great honor to welcome and introduce His Excellency ex-President Joaquim Chissano, the former President of the Republic of Mozambique and Chairperson of the Forum for Former African Heads of States and Government. His Excellency Chissano studied medicine in Portugal and was a founding member of the Mozambique Liberation Front, Frelimo. His Excellency Chissano was the Minister of Foreign Affairs when Mozambique gained independence from Portugal in 1975. With the tragic death of President Samora Machel in 1986, His Excellency Chissano was elected as his successor. His Excellency Chissano led positive socio-economic reforms, culminating with the adoption of the 1990 Constitution that led to the Republic of Mozambique, to the multi-party system, and to an open market. His Excellency Chissano was the chairperson of the Southern African Development Community, that's SADC, and chairperson of the African Union. After retiring from office, he was appointed envoy of the United Nations Secretary General for the 2005 summit to review the implementation of the Millennium Declaration, as well as special envoy of the UN Secretary to Guinea-Bissau and to the LRA affected areas, and from June 2009 as SADC mediator for Madagascar. He also led the Comités de Sages deployed in the Democratic Republic of the Congo to create an enabling environment for the first multi-party democratic elections in that country. Currently, His Excellency Chissano is the chairperson of the Joaquim Chissano Foundation, which aims to promote peace, social and economic development and culture, and of the Africa Forum of Former African Heads of States and Government. His Excellency Chissano is also a member of the board of the Peace Parks Foundation, Club of Madrid, the Hunger Project, and the International Crisis Group. He is a goodwill ambassador for CPLP, which means Portuguese-spoken countries, communities, and Global Partnership Initiative Youth Ambassador. His Excellency Chisano is also a member of the Advisory Council of the World Food Prize Foundation, a member of the High-Level Task Force for the Climate Services and the World Meteorology Organization, a member of the UNCTAD panel of eminent persons, member of the Advisory Panel for Global Development at the Melinda and Gates Foundation, and a member of the High-Level Task Force for the International Conference on Population and Development, ICPD. It's a lot of things, and it's just blowing. He has received the highest awards from many countries and has received several prizes, including the inaugural Mo Ibrahim Prize for Achievement of African Leadership in 2007. On behalf of the University of KwaZulu-Natal and the organizers of the Africa-Asia International Forum on Public Healthcare, Bioethics for Children and Youth, honoring 100 years of Nelson Mandela, I would like to welcome Your Excellency to provide the opening remarks and officially open the conference. And just to state that we are really privileged as the University of KwaZulu-Natal for having honored this request. Thank you so much.
Welcome the Zulu dancers to welcome our president. Malala. Thank you so much, Zulu dancers. His Excellency, President Chisano. This is our special way of rolling out a red carpet. This is the Ubuntu way of rolling out a red carpet. Please approach the podium so that you can share your wisdom with us.
When I was watching this dance, I forgot that I'm in KwaZulu. I thought I was in Maputo. It's our culture. You know, the Zulus had quarrels here, and some of them furious. They crossed the rivers and came to Mozambique, and they colonized us. And so they left this dance there. But sometimes we dance better, but this one, it was good. Has been improved, especially because it includes the emancipation of women. In the past, this dance was not danced by women. Professor Busi Ngama, Vice Chancellor of University of, Representative of Vice Chancellor of University of KwaZulu, Natal, Your Excellency Dr. Specioza Wandira Kazibwe, former President of the Republic of Uganda, Dr. Leonardo Simão, former Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Mozambique, and Executive Director of the Joaquim Chissano Foundation, Professor Y. Ni Seleti, Chief Director, Science Missions Department of Science and Technology, Republic of South Africa, Professor H.O. Kaya, Director, DST-NRF, Center in Indigenous Knowledge System, University of KwaZulu-Natal, representatives from the eThekwini municipality, distinguished delegates and representatives of bioethics institutions from Asia participating in this Africa-Asia International Forum on Public Health Care, Bioethics for Children and Youth, honoring 100 years of Nelson Mandela's legacy. Ladies and gentlemen, it certainly is my pleasure and singular honor to have the opportunity to share my views in this important event under the topic Africa-Asia International Forum on Public Healthcare Bioethics for Children and Youth, honoring 100 years of Nelson Mandela's legacy. We are meeting here to honor 100 years of Nelson Mandela legacy, a great icon of the African Revolution, whose prestige and influence in the peace-building and inclusion process among nations goes beyond the boundaries of our continent. But at the same time, we are meeting here while we are still shocked and full of consternation for the unexpected passing away of, on the past 18th day of August, of another great African icon who, like Mandela, brought to the international community the dignity of the African men and women, the dignity of the African continent, for the manner he, from the United Nations, served the people of the world during 44 years, which is more than half of his life. I am referring to the Secretary General of the United Nations from 1996 to 2006, Kofi Annan. For that reason, I would like to request that we all stand up and observe 1 minute of silence, meditation, or prayer. May his soul rest in peace in the kingdom of the Almighty and Merciful. Thank you. I am bringing Kofi Annan to be here with us, not just because I am bereaved, but mainly because he and Nelson Mandela are the clear examples of the most consequent practitioners of bioethics for children and youth. They were champions of human rights. They fought for the autonomy of the children and youth. They liked to listen to them, advise them while respecting their thoughts, and answer to their questions, whether in the streets or gardens of South Africa, Uganda, Algeria, Ghana, Congo, France, Chile, Uzbekistan, Nepal, Indonesia, India, or China, whether at the United Nations walls, where the young parliamentarians were given the podium to speak to the world. Both Mandela and Annan knew that the health of the child or the youth did not depend only on chemical medicines, but also and mainly on nutritious and balanced food, good shelter, enough clothing, family love, good family social environment, natural environment with good hygiene and sanitation. The Green Revolution, championed by Kofi Annan to promote food security and good nutrition, while Madiba mobilized the construction of schools, hospitals, promoted the construction of dignified habitat for the families, are some of the examples of their interest in building the better future for the people. However, the most important of what brings similarity or even identity of their ethics and practices is their dedication to the struggle for international peace and security, equality of persons and nations, and for the eradication of poverty, promotion of human rights, democracy, and economic development. All these aspects are complementary dimensions of bioethics for children and youth. They work together on these matters, inter alia, within the framework of the Forum of the Elders. Samora Machel, the first president of the Republic of Mozambique, taught us that the children are flowers that never shrink, but for them not to shrink, needed to be watered by the adults. He also taught us to call the children as our continuators, but for them to continue doing the good, our way of living as families, communities, or nations must be ethically correct. Samora Machel also regarded the youth as the sap of the nation. In this case, bioethics for the youth means that we must give the necessary nutrients and water to the soil for the composition of the sap that will go up in the tree, up to the leaves, to free oxygen in the air during the day, which the humans and other animals need to breathe, while at night it brings oxygen to the plants and carbon dioxide to the air. The nutrients for the youth are not only food, but also moral, culture, starting by the country's culture, knowledge and ability to think and to do things and interact. It is the youth who are going to innovate to prevent disease and for development. All is done in a balanced manner. Harmony is something important in the life of the world. I mean, in the existence of all what exists in the world. Nelson Mandela, Kofi Annan, and Samora Machel, even if they had not read it, knew already what Arthur Henry Allen and others wrote, and I quote, "With good reason, young people are the sap which will nourish the whole tree and eat through young, and it is through young people that democracy and so on." End of quote. Ladies and gentlemen, this Africa-Asia International Forum also reminds us of the event of April 1955, during which 29 countries, including Egypt, Indonesia, India, Iraq, and the People's Republic of China, met in Bandung, Indonesia, to establish what came to be known as the Movement of the Non-Aligned Countries. The Bandung Conference emerged out of an increasing sense of frustration and alienation among the countries that perceived what came to be characterized as the Cold War as unethical in international relations and diplomacy. These were nations that preferred to remain neutral during the escalating of political and diplomatic tension between the United States of America and the Union of the Socialist and Soviet Republics, called Cold War, believing that their interests would not be served by allying with either the United States or the Soviet Union. It was against this background of morality and ethics in international relations and diplomacy, and in the interest of the majority of the people on the planet Earth, that in April 1955, these representatives of 29 nations met to deliberate on issues they considered most pressing and unethical to the socio-economic well-being of the majority of the people on the planet, who opted for ethical principles and standards of coexistence in the world. Consequently, the various speeches and resolutions condemned colonialism and imperialism as unethical in international relations and diplomacy, and called for freedom of all subjugated peoples. Significantly, racism in all its forms was likewise criticized, with the apartheid system of South Africa coming in for particularly harsh condemnations as unethical and outside the ethical principles and standards of peaceful coexistence. The assembled nations also called for ethical and moral standards of international relations and diplomacy that recognize the welfare and dignity of the people as central to the ethics of coexistence of the people in the global configuration of power and the socio-economic development of the people on the planet Earth. In their view, the development and use of weapons of mass destruction was unethical, as it comprised the principles of peaceful coexistence between and among the people on the planet Earth. Consequently, the non-aligned nations called for an end to the nuclear arms race and the elimination of atomic weapons. In their view, the Cold War struggle between the United States of America and the Soviet Union had little meaning to nations battling for economic development, improved health and better crop yields, and fighting against the forces of colonialism and racism. This, in many ways, defies the African philosophy of Ubuntu, translated as, I quote, "I am because we are." And also, I quote again, humanity towards others. Significantly, it is often used in a more philosophical sense to mean, I quote again, the belief in a universal bond of sharing that connects all humanity. It is important to underscore the point that bioethics is a branch of ethical inquiry that examines the nature of biological and technological discoveries and the responsible use of biomedical advances, with particular emphasis upon their moral implications for our individual and common humanity. Indeed, public health is a discipline that focuses on promoting and safeguarding the health of communities at national, sub-regional, and regional levels. One of the questions that should also be addressed in the discussion of bioethics is the issue of economic cooperation in a globalized world and the role of bioethics. There is no doubt that as we work towards greater regional integration and cooperation and the rise of cross-border movements facilitating free exchange of products, we should also consider the issues of public health care and bioethics. This includes the market of healthcare products, services, as well as consumers in an expanding healthcare market. Distinguished participants from Asia and Africa, members from the academic communities assembled here, ladies and gentlemen, as we deliberate on public health care and more especially bioethics for children and youth, honoring 100 years of Nelson Mandela legacy, we should be guided and commit ourselves to the spirit of Ubuntu and the aspirations of the Bandung Conference, which would essentially translate into that the prime objective of science and philosophy and the laws in the form of code of conduct is to serve humanity. This brings to the center of bioethics and bioticists, the four basic principles of healthcare ethics, including autonomy, which requires that the patient have autonomy of thought, intention, and action when making decisions regarding healthcare. Justice, which calls for burdens and benefits of new or experimental treatment, not to be selective and must be distributed equally among all groups. There is also the issue of beneficency, which calls for the procedure to be provided with the intent of doing well for the patient involved and non-malfeasance, which requires that a procedure does not harm the patient involved or others in the society. Against this background of the 4 basic principles of healthcare ethics, we should be careful that in the new Scramble for Africa as experimental ground for testing the efficacy of pharmaceutical drugs guided by established principles and generally accepted codes of conduct. In this regard, it is important to bear in mind that public health is concerned with preventing disease and promoting life. I should like to emphasize that ethical decisions in public health must be based on more effective coordination between pharmaceutical industries on one hand and governments and the general public on the other. Such an approach should be embedded upon open, honest, and transparent information on the part of pharmaceutical industries based on bioethical recognized values through well-designed consultative process, which should be democratic and consensual. I am glad that this morning I heard someone who is teaching other people to plant our medicinal plants. Our healers in the past tended to say that these plants, these medicines cannot be planted, but they just should be harvested in the forest to be effective. But today I'm very much glad because among themselves there are those who are willing to show what plants they use, are willing to plant them so that all our generations to come may benefit with them. I am glad that their knowledge also has started to be planted in the heads of many of our youth, because although some of them they deny that this is not a science, but we believe that the science is there. It is absolutely unethical to use human beings as objects for pharmaceutical experimentation. It is often said that the second scramble for Africa, and indeed Asia, is to provide ground and facilities for experimentation in science and technology, particularly in the field of medicine. There is always pressure to accept drugs with poor evidence based particularly in rural Africa, where human beings are used as guinea pigs. In this regard, one of the key issues is for governments to adopt specific measures and values for ideal decision-making in public health. We all know that public health professionals operate in an ethical complex environment with tremendous pressure from pharmaceutical industries in an environment that does not respect open, honest, and transparent decision-making process. I may, in this regard, tell you a true story. When I was head of state, I had a good Minister of Health. And the Chinese showed us a plant which they use to combat malaria. And they started producing some pills out of that plant. And it was very much effective. And it was being utilized in China and other Asian countries. And so when I made a visit to China, they complained that they wanted to help Mozambique, but our Ministry of Health says that no, they could not receive that medicine because that medicine was not yet approved by the WHO. And I told the Chinese this, and they said, but you know, the Germans come here and buy this plant. And they are taking this product and they produce pills in Germany, which you buy in Africa. But it's based on this. But my doctor was saying, no, I have to wait from the orders from the WHO. And I know that in many countries it's like that. And this is the power of the pharmaceuticals. Well, one day you shall see that when they will find other medicines to sell for other diseases, they will suddenly discover a remedy to cure HIV. We all know that public health professionals, therefore, are operating in an environment that does not respect open, honest, and transparent decision-making process. There is no doubt that the mandate to ensure and protect the health of the public is an inherently moral one. It indeed carries with it the obligation to care for the well-being of communities, and it implies the possession of an element of power to carry out that mandate. I agree with those who have suggested that until recently, the ethical nature of public health has been implicitly assumed rather than explicitly stated. This, indeed, is a complex interdisciplinary subject involving philosophical issues including justice, theology, sociology, and above all, politics at national, sub-regional, regional, and international levels. The concept of bioethics, originally provided by von Rensselaer in 1970, now provides the basis for governments and medical institutions to develop programs related to public health at all levels of socioeconomic transformation and development. It has developed into a field of study focusing on ethical inquiry that examines the nature of biological and technological discovery and the responsible use of biomedical advances, with particular emphasis upon their moral implications for our individual and common humanity. Distinguished participants, special guests, scholars, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude my opening remarks for this Africa-Asia International Conference on Public Health Care, Bioethics for Children and Youth, honoring 100 years of Nelson Mandela's legacy, let me propose that it is important for this conference and subsequent activities to be guided by what the South African and global political icon would have emphasized, namely, for medical practice to be considered ethical. It should be embedded on the principles of autonomy, justice, beneficence, and non-maleficence. Mandela's philosophy, and certainly the spirit of Bandung, has been predicated on honesty, integrity, justice for all, and a shared understanding of the common aspirations of the people for better living standards, the eradication of infectious diseases, and prolonging as well, working towards a better livelihood for the majority of the people, whether in Asia or Africa. It is therefore important for public health practitioners, whether in the field of bioethics or other fields of medicine, to uphold the ethical standards and values systems that recognize the centrality of humanity in the world. The future belongs to children, and in particular to youth. I certainly appreciated the decision to give priority to the bioethics of climate change and adaptation for children and youth well-being. Is also linked to the issue of bioethics in food security, nutrition, and sustainable agriculture development. Here, I take note of the Hippocratic oath, I quote, "Let food be their medicine and medicine their food." Against this background, I should like to pay special tribute to the organizers of Africa-Asia International Forum on Public Health Care, Bioethics for Children and Youth, honoring 100 years of Nelson Mandela's legacy. It is my hope and expectation that the issue of the development and appropriate code of conduct for the manufacturing and promoting pharmaceutical products will be given the specific attention it deserves. Ngiyabonga kakhulu.
His Excellency, President Chisano, thank you so much for those wise words. I hope our youth is actually listening, because this message was specifically talking to them. And the elders, please do guide the children. We need them to actually take over and lead Africa.